Hello and welcome to the Next Minute podcast, where love outlives loss. So on the podcast, we're opening up the conversation on grief and mental health. No filters, no stigma. Every episode brings stories of struggle, resilience and hope. Because even when life feels dark, there's always light waiting to break through. Now, I wasn't going to do an episode this week, believe it or not. I know some of you would have missed my voice on your Sunday morning or your Monday morning commute to work. I was going to look at doing it every 2 weeks and then focus on getting guests in that time, so you're not just listening to me drone on. But I've seen the stats come out from the I can't what it's called, the Office of National Statistics, where it's been reported that suicide in Wigan is at an all-time high. I just wanted to kind of shine a light on that, that figure. It's shocking that it's gone up, shocking that it's still going up, but when I looked deeper into the figures, I was shocked at how much it has gone up, and it's not just gone up in Wigan. I think Wigan grew by about 17% in terms of the number of suicides in the borough, while nationally it was 3%, so it's well above the national average. To just kind of to break down what the report says from the Office of National Statistics, it shows that there was 162 deaths from suicide that was reported between 2022 and 2024, so that's up, like I mentioned earlier, 17%. So it's gone up from 138 between the period of 2021 to 2023, and that's the highest figure recorded for Wigan since records began. I think that they started in 2001, I believe. So to kind of put that into perspective a little bit, on average, 135 people are affected by suicide, or affected by a single suicide. So if we look at those 162 deaths, it's expected that 21,870 people in Wigan alone were affected by those 162 suicides. Now, across England, the total, I think, for England was 16,657 reported suicides for that same period, so 22 to 24. And like I mentioned, that was up 3% from the previous period. Now, that doesn't include suicides that couldn't be confirmed by the coroner. So there'll be some suicides that have gone down as death by misadventure, or accidental deaths, or another cause. So it's likely the figures are actually even higher than that. There's also a delay from when it's ruled by a coroner. So there's a chance that there's some between that period that are still being investigated by the coroner as well. So again, there's a chance that they could be even higher. Now, I don't know why, but I feel like when I was expecting the figures to come out, well, I do know why. I was expecting that when the figures came out, it would actually show a decrease. And it's actually gone the opposite way. It's been a massive increase. And we've obviously had the pandemic, which had a massive negative impact. You've got the cost of living, there's just a lot of negativity, particularly in news. There's a lot of pressures on people from social media. I can't remember where I saw it actually. I saw a clip the other day on social media, and it was talking about, I can't remember who it was, but it was talking about basically you go to someone's house, and all you see, in fact, I think it was Luke Ambler from Andy's Man Club. It basically said when you go into someone's house, or you walk past, you see the windowsill, and it's always got, the happy pictures, pictures from like weddings, christenings, family holidays. You never see pictures of like the sad times. That's because you always want to display the good side of life. And that's exactly what people do on social media. There's a big thing for not necessarily showing off, but showing your highlights on social media. Now, there's one quote I love. I think it was by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's comparison is a thief of joy. So when you're scrolling through social media, you see someone's, the perfect life. What you're not seeing is the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. So they might need to get away on holiday for, they've got a ton of stress at work. They might have stress at home. And they might be going through their own personal issues. We don't see that. We don't need to see that. We don't need to know what's going on in everybody else's life. But it's that comparison that we do where we look at someone else's life and, wow, they've got it great. But in reality, they've got their own shit going on. They're obviously just not displaying it. Now, I think we put pressure on ourselves when we are seeing those lives on social media, and not just from people within the community, but these influencers and things like that. And I think, like I said, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves by comparing ourselves against others. I think that's something that we need to be better at. I've done it myself, trying to, put a pin in it and sort of reduce what I'm doing and take a step back from social media. But I usually just find myself doom scrolling, so that's easier said than done. But it's true, like we always compare ourselves to other people's, what we view as other people's perfect lives, because that's all we see. If you started to peel back, those pictures and look what's behind them, you'd see, that there is struggles going on behind those pictures. So there's a lot of that, but there's a lot of good on social media as well. Ren, the artist, the musician, he talks a lot about his own personal journey and what he's been through. There's, I can't remember what the name of the song is now. I think it's just called Hi Ren, and that talks about what he's been through, his own battles with autoimmune disease, these struggles around mental health, which was, a lot of it was caused by trying to get the correct diagnosis for what he was struggling with. But he opens up a lot through his songs and through his social media, and he's very open and honest about what he's been through. And it's people like that are helping to break the stigma. Somebody's going to watch those videos and listen to him, and they'll find the strength from that to, open up themselves, or maybe they've got a medical condition that they've, not wanted to go to seek a professional help for because they're fearing the worst. And that again, that's easy done. You feel like if you don't go to the doctor because you've got something going on, that just means that you're not going to get the diagnosis, but it also means you're not going to get the treatment either. And I've been there. I think a couple of years ago, I think it was just after I lost Taylor, I found a lump in my back. And for weeks I put it off because I was worried it was cancer. And in my head, I was kind of thinking, right, if I don't get diagnosed, then I've not got it. And I know how stupid that sounds, but that was kind of like my mindset. If I ignore it, the problem's going to go away. And that was, obviously, that's never going to be the case, but it was just a case of, if I don't get that treatment, don't get that diagnosis, I don't have to deal with it. And then it did take a couple of weeks. I didn't talk to anyone about it at all. And then eventually I thought, if I am just, the only thing I'm doing there is stopping myself getting any potential treatment. If you ignore the fact, then it's not going to go away. You need to find out what it is and then find out the best course of action to treat it. Luckily for me, it was nothing. I think he just turned around and said it's just a fatty lump. I was like, well, I don't know if he's calling me there or if that's his actual diagnosis, but yeah, turned out to be nothing. Ended up getting a ultrasound as well, which was a little bit weird. That jelly is absolutely piss. Not freezing cold. It was freezing cold. Yep, it wasn't warm at all. So yeah, there's a lot of things we do to put ourselves off from things and to compare ourselves against others' lives, but going back to these stats, like I said, I was kind of hoping that, not even hoping, I was expecting they would come down, but definitely not go up as much as they did. So, what can we do to change that? What can we do to combat those figures rising? Now, I'm just Sean, grew up in Goulburn, no qualifications around mental health. I've done a couple of courses this year. Certainly not a professional in the area. I've got some lived experience. Do my volunteer work with Andy's Man Club, but that doesn't make me a professional at all. But I do know sharing our experiences. So I mentioned Ren earlier. I tried to do it as well. Share my own experience, and I know people have reached out when I do that to say it's helped them to get support, or it's giving them some encouragement to take that first step, or even just to come to an Andy's Man Club. But sharing our own experiences with mental health does help others. It's one of the reasons for doing this podcast. And like I said, if it just helps one person, then if you think, when I mentioned that stat earlier, 135 people are affected by a single suicide. So by helping one person, you're actually helping those additional 135 people as well. So that's 136 people you've helped just by talking about your own experience. And I know that is a lot easier said than done. I know when I first started to write the blog, like the weeks after Taylor died, I wouldn't put the blog out straight away, just because I knew when I was writing those emotions down, I wasn't in a headspace where I felt like I could deal with the comments coming back. And I knew they would have been positive, but I just didn't want to deal with, the phone pinging, people saying how proud of me they were, how amazing I'm doing. Because the fact is, I wasn't proud of myself. I didn't feel like I was doing amazing. But I knew those comments would come, and they did. But I waited till I was in a place where I could share it, and then I did. So what I'll say is, if you've been through something similar, or you've been through your own challenges, if you're in a place where you can share it, then I would encourage you to do so, but only if it's going to benefit you as well. Because what you don't want to do is share your own experience, but it have a negative impact on you as well. So you've got to make sure that you are in the right sort of headspace to do that. Other ways you can do it: challenge misinformation and negative language. So, I've read off quite a few stats from the ONS. Yep, ONS. If any of those wrong, then please obviously challenge me. I have fact checked them today, but writing them down and just verifying them. But if there's ever anything that's put out there that or you don't believe to be accurate, challenge it. Challenge the negative language. One thing a lot of people still say is committed suicide, and that does bring a stigma to it because of the term committed. It makes it sound like a crime, and that again stemmed from in the past where it was a crime, or it was considered a crime for someone to take their own life. So by challenging that kind of language, challenging, if your typical sort of internet bullies, who sort of post comments just for the sake of trying to get a laugh, or for their own weird enjoyment, where they'll sort of comment, someone being selfish and things like that. It's time we started challenging and show that those comments, that they're not acceptable. I think that's where I feel like I could do better, because I'm always one to kind of sit on the sidelines if I see stuff like that. I'm getting more proactive with it now, where I will speak up if I see something that I don't think is acceptable. Supporting each other with non-judgmental conversations. So that was a big thing for me from Andy's Man Club. We can go in. There's certain rules, like we can't talk about politics, religion, criminal matters for obvious reasons, and medication. So you can talk about how they make you feel. If you're going through a something legally that or a criminal matter, so you can talk about how it affects you and how it's making you feel, not the details of it, similar to medication. But it's just a place where you can go and you can just open up without people feeling like they have to give you the answers. So sometimes you just want to talk just to get it off your chest. Now, sometimes you'll speak to friends and family, and because they care about you and they love you, they'll look to find solutions. But sometimes you don't need that. You just need to get it off your chest, and that is the solution. Just clearing it, getting that weight off you, and then kind of moving on and deal with it again when you need to. It can be as simple as that sometimes. Other times you might need a deeper conversation around, the mental health, professional support. So bring those conversations into home. I've done that with Elijah and Koa. We had at one point some flashcards that had different emotions on when they was a little bit younger. When Koa was going through a spell where he was struggling with his emotions, that worked really well. And if he sort of picked the anger card, we had a punch bag he'd go and hit. Sometimes what worked for him was just going to the door and just screaming, which my neighbours loved. But it's just about finding something that works for you. And I think by bringing those conversations into the home, bringing them into the communities, so it just helps to break that stigma, I think I can't remember what the stat was, I'll have to find it, but I think by the age of 14 is when the mental health problems start to sort of develop and really set in for children and young adults. I'm just going to double check that because, again, just challenging the misinformation. But I did write it down the other day from one of my training courses. While I'm searching for that, though, other ways you can do it is just research. So what support is available to you, or what support is available not just for yourself, but in case you know someone who's struggling. So I mentioned the Hub of Hope. That is a great tool. I use it quite often. It kind of shows in your area and sort of nationally what support's available. So you basically just put in depression, anxiety, substance abuse, whatever it is you might be struggling with, and then it'll return a list of local and national resources available to you. And it's just a great tool just for that, because like I said, even if you're doing it just to have that knowledge ready in case someone you encounter or someone you know is struggling, you can just be like, oh right, have you heard of X, Y or Z? Or you can even just point them to the Hub of Hope app or website just so they can use it themselves. There is also Asking Twice. So I was at an event a couple of months ago, and someone actually said, don't ask twice, just ask once. And then if they don't respond or they don't answer, just leave it, because they don't want to talk. Now my advice is the complete opposite to that. If somebody asks me how I'm doing, when I'm struggling, my response would usually be, oh, I'm just tired. And that was my way of kind of just sort of not answering. I've given something. They're like, all right, he's just tired. That's it. But if they had have asked me again, and a few times it happened, they'd say, how are you really doing? And then I'd be like, well, you've kind of caught me out there. And then you tend to find that people are a little bit more open once you ask again. Sometimes it might just be that they are actually fine or they are actually tired, but asking again just gives them that opportunity to be a bit more honest, a bit more open, and it it's just a little gateway that you can use to get in. And if they're willing to be open and then share a little bit, then it's that conversation, you know, either they just want to vent, or you can then say, oh, actually, I've been on the Hub of Hope, here's some resources available, I'll point them to it. And it's just having that awareness. And another thing is, I think men in particular are quick to say, we'll go for a pint. Now, a pint and obviously drinking doesn't tend to help when it comes to anxiety, depression. Might give them, you know, like temporary Dutch courage, as they say, but in the long term, it's going to be that negative impact it's going to have. So I just say go for a brew, go for a nip to, obviously our place is Starbucks, Costa, you know, whatever, or just a local one. There's loads around. Just go and grab a brew. It's a little bit quieter, so they might be more willing to open up, you know, in a quieter setting. And finally, it's just education. So educate yourselves on, or ourselves, on mental health, on support available. Like I said, I've been doing some courses this year. The one I'm doing right now, children and young people's mental health. I'm going to do an episode on that, because some of the stuff I was finding and that I've learned about that has just been absolutely mind-boggling. The biggest thing for me was finding out that, to be fair, I found this out before the course, but children as young as 5 taking their own life. Now, not necessarily in some cases that they're suicidal. Sometimes it's just that misunderstanding of not knowing the finality of death. I've mentioned it on here before. I've had that with Koa, where he wanted to die to go and see his mum. In his head, that was his way of going seeing her. But then he was coming back to me. So we had to have that conversation, and we had to have it a couple of times, to be honest. But it's that kind of thing that, you know, if we have that better education, not just for ourselves, but in schools as well, and I don't mean necessarily from the ages of 5, but if there is that awareness, and if that awareness has been brought in at a younger age, then there's a better chance, you know, when they do start to, you know, really process those feelings and those emotions, and when they do start to transition into adulthood, that they're aware of what support's available to them. They've got a better understanding of how to manage their emotions. They've maybe built some resilience in that time. But I have managed to find some of those stats that I was on about for children and young people's mental health. Now, we're not quite at the Joe Rogan budget yet, so I've not got Jamie doing the research for me live. I've got to do it myself. But around 75% of all mental health problems in adult life actually start by the age of 18, and 50% by the age of 14. So by the age of 14, 50% of your mental health problems are likely to have started by that point, and 75% by the age of 18. That's just, think of the stuff that you go through. I've been researching the impacts of puberty, which is always a lovely topic. But just sort of that transition and, you know, those changes you're going through. When I was thinking about it, the sort of pressure you got from high school, or that transition from primary school into high school, you know, there's a lot of pressure on kids these days. And we was talking about homework the other day. Now, Elijah's 7. He's got to practice guitar 5 times a week, read 5 times a week. He's got maths homework, he's got spellings, and I'm sure there's something else I'm missing. But he's got to do all that, and while obviously around me working, out playing with his friends, and you've got to try and fit it in somewhere around tea, visiting family. It's just hard to fit it all in. And then I found out that if they don't do something, then they miss the playtime at school. And it just, I mean, he's 7 years old. Like, it just doesn't seem right. And I heard something apparently that it's part of the reason is to kind of catch up from COVID. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of pressure on kids these days. Now, just to add a bit of weight to that, I found out that suicide is the most common cause of death for boys aged 15 to 19, and it's the second most for girls of the same age. 15 to 19, and it's the most common cause of death. I mean, 15 to 19, how are we letting this happen? So, yeah, doing that course, and that's exactly what I wanted to do it for. Wanted to educate myself, but I wanted to see if I can do something that means there's a better chance of the kids not going through those struggles alone. You know, when they're age 15 to 19, they know they can come and talk to me. They know that there's certain support available. They know where to go to look for it if they don't want to talk to me. They know they've got people around them that they can talk to. For me, that's what I see. And any parent would see their job's to keep them safe. That doesn't mean safe from just sort of physical harm or, being safe crossing the road or whatever. It means being safe mentally as well. And this is like my main purpose for doing this course is to protect the kids, but also to be a better support for them when needed. So we have talked a lot about support. I'm going to do an episode around children and young people's mental health, because I think the course I'm doing is just highlighted so many things for me to be aware of, which I also want to bring to you guys as well, because I think, like I said, that's the most common cause of death for 15 to 19-year-old boys is suicide, and the second most for girls. It's just mind-blowing. It shouldn't be that way. So what support is available? For children, you've got things like CAMS, Papyrus. That's local to Wigan, so that's down in Warrington, but that's a national charity. Also got Samaritans. Obviously mentioned the Hub of Hope. Now, in Wigan alone, there's clubs opening up, there's organisations, charities, Wigan Warriors and Wigan Athletic do amazing stuff around breaking the stigma around mental health. If you go and follow the social media page, you'll see, particularly around World Mental Health Day, where they released a video and it shows what support's available. In terms of sport, you've got Andy's Man Club, Directions for Men. There's the Girls Club, which I think's quite new. That's in Wigan. I think I've just seen a post that they're opening a Girl Teens Club as well, which I'm assuming would be, supporting teenage girls. And thinking of that stat, that the 15 to 19-year-olds are the second most common, that's needed. You've got obviously Wigan Youth Zone, they do a lot of great work as well. Epic Hope CIC, the more I read into them, the more I find out how amazing they are. I was reading I think they've got now a mobile crisis harbour. So it's literally just a van that's purpose built as a mental health crisis harbour. So there'll be more details on the website. I'm going to look into that a little bit more, but that sounds absolutely incredible. That's bringing the support to you. They've got crisis harbours in Wigan and Atherton, I believe. So the ones in Wigan are in Crompton Street, in the town centre. That's on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday, or on Sunday now. So all the details on their website. That Crisis Hub is just a safe place to talk. I think they run somewhere between, I think the times on the website, but Tuesdays 10 till 6, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. that is. Wednesdays 12 noon to 8 p.m. Fridays 3 p.m. to 11. Sundays 12 noon till 8 p.m. So it's just there is a ton of support out there, and it's amazing support. A lot of it's peer-to-peer. There's professional support. Obviously, you've got the NHS. There's a raft of support out there. The big thing is, I think, or the big issue is at the minute, is awareness. So we tend to know about the bigger charities like Samaritans, obviously NHS. But do you know about things like the Girls Club, Epic Hope, CIC, Andy's Man Club, Directions for Men? We really need to start shining a light on these organisations. They're doing a lot of great work. They're saving lives. And I think we need to, as a community, just start shouting about them. So I'm going to start doing probably a highlight, probably a monthly one or a weekly one, just highlighting some of these charities. I'm going to try and get some of them down to do a podcast, just to highlight exactly what they're doing, get a bit more information, their purpose, their drive, and just bring that information to you guys. And that is my plan and my drive, for the coming months now, just to shine a light on these organisations. So it's been a very cheery episode, but like I said, it's about breaking that stigma now. Let's normalise these conversations. Let's bring these figures down. There shouldn't be that many suicides across the UK, let alone in Wigan. It feels like it's a pandemic all over again with the suicide rates at the minute. And like I said, there's a lot of support. And I think without that support, those figures would have been much higher. And I don't want that to take away from the support that is out there, because they're doing a ton of great work. And you can see, just by those figures, the amount of people. Andy's Man Club had 6,500 men this Monday just gone. So that's 6,500 men that are not included in those statistics because they're still here. Now, if you didn't have places like Andy's Man Club, the Girls Club, Epic Hope, it just shows, how much those figures would be higher. So the support is there. I'm hoping the next set of stats that comes out in a couple of years shows that decrease, or, at the very least, it's been maintained. But let's hope it's all come down. So I'll leave it there. Continue to do weekly podcasts because I think there's a need for shining a light on these. If you are struggling, feel free to drop me a message. Use the Hub of Hope. It is a fantastic tool. Reach out to any of these organisations and charities I've mentioned. But just take some time, even if you're not struggling, just to educate yourself on what support's available around the area. You'll find that there is plenty out there, and I bet you'll find quite a lot that you've never heard of before. So we'll leave it there, and thank you very much for tuning in, for listening, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all that lovely stuff. And remember, you can always get through the next minute.